Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the MrWarrenHayes Show. I am Mr. Warren Hayes, and today we are joining you in your favorite podcast app on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes to talk about professional wrestling. We are recording this on June 27, recapping the week's events. Look, it's pretty heavy on the Forbidden Door stuff, but look, before we get into that, consider leaving a like here on this video if you're watching this on YouTube, and youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes on top of that. And consider subscribing as well, because I do a bunch of content. I do a bunch of content that you can watch here on YouTube and that you can listen to as well on your favorite podcast application, which, by the way, if you are, consider leaving 5-star reviews on Spotify and 5-star ratings on Spotify, 5-star reviews on Apple Podcast. All these little things coming together help grow the podcast tremendously. And look, I mean, just a little thing you can do to help, and I'd appreciate it a great deal. So there you go. But yeah, tonight we've got we go through quite a few things, particularly Forbidden Door in depth. So if you're into that, this is the place to be. AEW New Japan Forbidden Door 2023. I'm going to be reviewing that in lots of detail, talking quite a bit about it, and as well a little preview of Money in the Bank 2023, the big WWE PLE that's happening this weekend, and a quick preview of New Japan Strong Independence Day, which is happening next week. So stick around for that, and once we're done, well, you can also join the Mr. Warren Hayes Show Discord. When you do, you get to continue chatting with a whole bunch of great professional wrestling fans. Nice little community we got going. Link is in the description if you want to jump in. And yeah, I mean, like I said, you can subscribe to the channel. You can continue listening on your podcast stuff, because outside of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show proper, I also do reviews of Dynamite, reviews of Collision every Thursday and Sunday, respectively. So if you don't want to miss out on those, you know what to do. You know what the good thing is. Keep me in your notifications. Keep me in your feeds. You won't regret it. Hopefully you won't regret this podcast either, because it's a good time. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get to it. Weekly Wrestling Inspection begins now. And we are going to start this evening talking about Forbidden Door 2023, Forbidden Door 2, whatever you want to call it. That was the big wrestling show that happened not all that long ago, just a couple of days ago, of course, in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, Scotiabank Arena. Listen, this, as you know, maybe it's the first time you're tuning in, so I don't want to, assume that everyone is aware. But I had the privilege of being at that show, and this was a special show, folks. It really was. And I've been trying to come together with my thoughts, on how to start this one off, how to get into it, and I've been listening to a lot of podcasts since, because I traveled out of Ottawa back here, Toronto. Jesus, I've traveled out of Toronto back home, and I've been listening to a lot of podcasts since, because I wanted to hear. I was excited to hear what other people had to say about it, because I felt like everyone, all the podcasts that I listened to, the people I chat with, I feel everyone was really, really excited. Like, I feel like the show ended and everyone was super excited about pro wrestling, and I wanted to continue feeling that. So, there might be some podcast bleed here, as we like to call it, in case you listen to other spaces and you're like, hey, haven't I heard this before? Like, maybe, or I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I am only purveying fresh takes here. And I think it's okay. I think it's okay that in this circumstance I'm a little tainted, because I think the main takeaway here is excitement. I think it's energy. It's the thrill of professional wrestling, right? Because I finished this show. The show finished like what, at midnight? And I got out of there and I was excited. I was so excited and happy and thrilled by the show I just watched. Feeling good about pro wrestling. I walked back to my hotel. It was about a 20-25 minute walk from Scotiabank Center. And I really didn't care about, taking a cab or an Uber, public, whatever. I walked home. And that's all. It was all that I was thinking about. I was replaying moments. I was replaying events. I was just letting that moment really sink in. I was just like in the middle of the biggest city in the country and, people around and still bustling. And I was up. I was awake in my hotel room till 3 a.m. Jacked. Stoked. I was still like, And I had to take a flight out at 7 a.m. And I got to tell you, when this show was announced, when it was originally announced, I didn't know if I could go. I really didn't know if I could go for a bunch of reasons. I take care of a lot of people. Well, not a lot. It's I take care of people who are very close to me here. So I wasn't sure there was an opening for me to do it. Like I honestly did not know if I could have an opportunity to travel to a city relatively close to where I live in my own country to see, a bunch of my favorite wrestlers, some of my all-time faves, compete live. And I was talked into it, to be perfectly honest. It's my fiance, Kristen. She convinced me. She told me I owed this to myself. She said that I would regret not going because, like I said, some of my favorite professional wrestlers were coming together. Not that far away, far enough to suck, far enough for not to like be a bus ride, like, return bus fare, but so when I was walking back, this is where I'm getting at. I took the plunge essentially, right? So I took the plunge, bought the tickets, and then I was like panicked and terrified, and I didn't know if it was going to be able to happen. And things all worked out, and people made things work out for me, and I appreciate that. So when I was walking back, that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about not having had the opportunity to come and see that show live when it was so close to me. I would have been stoked to watch all of this on pay-per-view. Don't get me wrong, but here's the thing. In my day-to-day life with my my day job and my family, I don't have a group of wrestling buddies. I don't have friends that I do have friends, but I don't have wrestling friends. I don't have people that I can sit down and we can start, picking stuff apart, or it's like people know I love pro wrestling. So then when we start talking, or when that comes up, or they start talking to me about it, then we're it's like, hey, Hogan and Warrior, right, man? And remember when Andre, he slammed Hogan and everyone was going nuts, and then they start talking about, there was like, what was there? There was like 95,000 people in the at WrestleMania that one year. No, they advertised at 93,000, but in reality, then I get into the Silverdome shit. And they're like, oh, and I stopped watching with Stone Cold. Remember Stone Cold? Yes. Yes, I do, And and so there's no one like immediately around me that ever shared this type of love of pro wrestling, not as an adult anyway. And I started doing pro wrestling content creation stuff back in the day at Daily DDT as a writer because it felt comfortable and good at a time where I needed to find comfort for myself. And I promise one day we'll talk about what led me to getting involved into this wacky online stuff, but it's for another time. But it's this desire to want to connect with wrestling fans and talk about wrestling passionately that got me into writing, then podcasting. Then I eventually fixated into what I wanted to do, and that's to build a community. I wanted to create a place for like-minded people to share what they love. So I go to Forbidden Door, I go to a show like Forbidden Door, and I feel a show that I feel encapsulates everything that I love about pro wrestling. And I see 13,000 plus people all around me, and they're excited for the same reasons. We're not sitting around being snarky. There's no one sitting around going, well, what are the stories? Why is this a dream match? It's like I'm like, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been trying to develop and trying to connect with. This is and this is what I've been. I can see it, and I know it's a reality, and this is something that I've been trying to do, and that is to create a community of people who love wrestling just like those 13,000 people did. Selfishly, I made this principally for myself, because I wanted to be attached with people who shared the same passion, the same things about wrestling that I liked as well. So when I tell you, we're going all the way around here. So it reminded me of what I did this, why I started. In fact, look, I started doing content creation for a reason, and then it led to me wanting to build a community for professional wrestling fans. That's ultimately what I wanted. One where people would feel welcome, that we'd all find common ground, and that I couldn't care less about what your gender is, what your sexual preference is, what your color is, your nationality. I couldn't care less. As long as we all love wrestling, that's really what matters. And then Forbidden Door reminded me how palpable all of this is. Because the energy, the excitement, everyone's just fucking talking to each other, right? You got people, you bump into someone, hey, sorry, man, I apologize. Say, hey, how you say, oh, nice t-shirt, man. Oh, man. Then everyone has a story about how they got a t-shirt, It's like everyone's chatting, everyone's having a good time. It's a party, it's fun. And that's what I want out of pro wrestling and what I do here. And it only made it clearer for me. So when I tell you, anyone who wants to hear it, I'll tell them. When I tell you, delete Twitter. Find your people. Connect with a community of pro wrestling fans that are like you. This is what I mean. Because shows like Forbidden Door prove to me that we're not some weird hardcore base that you can count on the tips of your fingers. And we're not alone in, we keep hearing about how the casuals have to be drawn in. And we have, how the audience, we have to reach out to people who don't watch wrestling. We got to get them into wrestling. But we have spots, areas, environments, places. There is an entire living, thriving, mainstream scene of pro wrestling that answers to pro wrestling fans like myself, probably like you as well, that are listening, watching. It's there. You don't have to put up with people who don't get it. Or, who come up with, straw man arguments and wonder, what the stories are and try to bring down what you're getting into. You don't have to put up with that, because it's clear to me more than ever that there is demand, there is offer, there are people, thousands of people. Thousands and thousands of people. We just filled up a hockey arena this weekend. We filled up a hockey arena on 2 matches. One that had a story that had been told sporadically on occasion over 2 different wrestling promotions, and the other one had no story. It was just a cool fucking match. We really have to stop listening to people who don't get it. We really do. We really have to stop giving them air, making them feel like, giving them whatever they need. We have to stop. Because it's not worth it. There's no fight to be had. We're not trying to challenge anyone or convert people, because we're here. We're already here as fans, as pro wrestling fans. And the people who don't get it, the people who are, who routinely will say, AEW is failing, I don't know, where are the matches, where are the stories, everything. So they just don't get it. And their biggest crime in all of this is not that they're stupid, it's just that they're missing out. Because they missed out on a fantastic show. An all-timer show. My favorite pay-per-view show of the year so far. And by far. And as much as I loved Revolution, as much as I love Sakura Genesis, was it probably due because I was there? Does that taint it? Sure, but isn't that what going to see live wrestling is about? It's kind of what it is. So their biggest crime is just that they're missing out. And that's on them. So I'm telling you, delete Twitter. Get rid of it. Dump it. Come to my Discord, for instance. And then there's other people. Then you can connect with other Discords, and you will find a spot. You will find like-minded people without having the arguments and the nonsense over and over again. Enough about, Warren and your feelings. No one wants that. Let's talk about it. Let's go. Let's go. June 25th, 2023, Forbidden Door. AEW New Japan Pro Wrestling. WrestleTix estimated 13,631 tickets distributed. AEW announced that at 14,826. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle here. AEW, probably bouncing numbers a little higher, right? Maybe doing things a little, just pushing a little higher. But who doesn't, right? Who doesn't? It was the biggest gate in the history of AEW. And I think that's a statement that took a lot of people by surprise. Tony Khan tweeted about it on the same night. Tonight, Forbidden Door in Toronto is officially the biggest live gate in AEW history at about 1.2 million United States buckaroos. He said it's one of the top 3 biggest live gates in the history of pro wrestling in Canada. The 2 others would be WrestleMania 6 in 1990 and WrestleMania 18 or X8 in 2002, which was The Rock and Hogan, right? And WrestleMania 6, of course, was Hogan and Ultimate Warrior, which, by the way, both did over $3 million and were held in the Rogers Center, formerly known as the Sky Dome. So maybe, just maybe, maybe if you had run a stadium. I don't know. But, of course, we're all talking about these records here, talking about how much big money. We have Motown Slim in the chat was at WrestleMania 6. Look at you, man. Holy crap. But we're all talking about these records here as if these are going to be some long-standing records, when in fact all of this is going to be puerile nonsense once we hit August this year. because All In is going to happen in Wembley, which will reportedly bring in over $8 million. So, no use spending too much time and patting ourselves on the back in regards to this big gate, biggest gate in company history, third biggest in Canada. Like who? Third biggest in Canada, sure. I think that it's not insignificant. If I'm not mistaken, it is the only non-WWE company was ever run a wrestling show in Canada that has done $1 million gate. Gates and tickets. All right, Warren, this is all great, but what about the pay-per-view buys? Well, during the post-show scrum, Tony Khan said that according to his early results, Forbidden Door will not only do better than last year's Forbidden Door, but will also do better than Double or Nothing this year. Now, they were about 140K each, right? What was your boy talking about last week? I was being bullish. You remember that? 155, 160K, I believe I said. We got a little more news courtesy of WrestleNomics today. There goes the weekly plug for WrestleNomics and Brandon Thurston and all the great news and work that he does over there. Brandon, in his news update today, estimated that the pay-per-view grossed $7.4 million between pay-per-view tickets and merch sales. And after the cut from pay-per-view services, he estimates that it'll be around $4.9 million. And this includes pay-per-view sales off of New Japan World as well. But these are all his estimates based on, whatever data sheets he has set up and follows, right? He also reminded that the reported 140,000, which he feels, that's his estimate, by the way. That's the one I've been using. Because the last real numbers that we ever heard, because I saw a few reports being thrown around, right? Saying that Forbidden Door last year did between 127,000 to 130,000 pay-per-views. And that was really off of the last time that this was a report that based off of the last time that Dave Meltzer had talked about it in The Observer, but no one had really updated it with Brandon's estimations. And I've been using the 140K amount for Forbidden Door last year. But but that's what he said. He said he estimates 140,000 for Forbidden Door across all platforms globally, including New Japan World as well. He says that since Tony Khan said that it was on track to outperform last year's Forbidden Door and Double or Nothing this year, Brandon feels that this will likely be the best-selling AEW pay-per-view in just over a year. It's good business. You know, like we've been talking about for many weeks in regards to months at this point, in regards to AEW pay-per-views, we see where their floor is right now. They're hanging around 145,000 pay-per-view buys per pay-per-view. That's pretty much the average that we've been seeing. So if everyone is saying that it's going to outperform, it's going to outdo, and when you think about it, 155,000 to 160,000, which is my just like educated guess, I should say. When you think about it, with all the buzz that was surrounding the show, with the addition of Okada and Danielson, like it was still off of these two matches. Then in the last few days, just match after match being added, great matches on top of that. People get excited because, one thing, and I do believe again, this is something I've talked about in the past, but I think it's becoming clearer and clearer as well. People need to have a big match in their brain to remind them to say, oh, this pay-per-view is going to rock, I'm going to buy it. But from all of us here in the chat right now, like Sports and Things shows, how you doing, Carlos? Welcome. From all of us here in the chat, how many of you buy a pay-per-view weeks before the show? How many of you buy a pay-per-view 1 week before the show? I would assume that most pay-per-view buys are same day things. Because there's so much stuff going in all of our lives, everything happening, right? That you're like, well, at the very basis, I'm going to wait. I'm going to see to the last minute before actually diving in. If I'm able to clear out all my chores and I was able to cook dinner for everyone and I put the kids to bed or whatever, then I'll buy it, right? See, same day of this. I think that's normal behavior in our time. Now, maybe back in the 90s, when we had to call our cable or satellite provider to ask them to unlock it, well, you didn't wait till, 6:55 to get it done. I wouldn't think. I would assume that you had to do it a couple of days beforehand just to make sure everything went through. You probably couldn't even call in on a Sunday. In some parts, it's all stuff you had to sort of plan ahead. Now you don't have to. And and I'm pretty sure, because I haven't done this in forever. I've never called a cable provider, not never, but I haven't called them in decades to ask them for a pay-per-view. What are we doing? But I'm assuming that even today, the technology for them to unlock it over on your TV screen is a lot easier, right? With the terminals now, they're not just like cable boxes with fucking tubes inside. I'm pretty sure it's a lot easier for them to just like hit the switch. It's like okay, and you delivery and send and whatever. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure the whole process is a lot simpler. Today, much more simpler than it was back then. So no one, I'd say no one. I don't want to say no one because I don't want to I don't want to make a sweeping statement, but I would assume that most people are same-day buyers. And I think Tony Khan has this data. Why wouldn't he have this data? And I'm pretty sure that he books his matches and his programs with that mentality in mind. You have to have one or two things to captivate the imagination. Because look, let's not forget, the CM Punk John Moxley build for All Out last year. That was complete shit. It was terrible. And I think it reflected on the pay-per-view buys, because All Out last year did not do good business. Well, I mean, it did fine business. I don't want to say it was far from being a failure. Let me retract that. Let me phrase that better. It didn't do as good as it should have. But we didn't even have this match signed until the week before. Now, there were shenanigans, there were injuries, there was Rocky 3, we know that there was a whole lot going on. But at the time, I remember speculating and saying to myself, I'm willing to bet Tony Khan is trying something here, that he's testing the waters for something. Where he's like, my theory is that, whatever I put in at the main event, it won't affect the number. That ultimately, if it's a main event that'll captivate the imagination, people are going to buy it because all they're going to do is buy on the same day regardless. I don't think that experiment was all that successful. I would have assumed that a John Moxley CM Punk main event would have generated a little more interest. I think it would have lit up the crowd, the imagination a little more. So therefore, I think if you take a step back and you just think about it, I think it makes a lot of sense that these days, in our modern era, you don't have to have 6 to 8 weekly build feuds for the past 3 months to sell a pay-per-view. I don't think that's where we're at anymore. You need a couple of big matches, again, that captivate the imagination, and then the rest will fall into place. That's why when I hear people get upset when we're getting close to Double or Nothing, there's only 3 matches announced. Those are the 3 matches that are going to make you buy the pay-per-view or not. I don't think Christian Cage versus Wardlow was a game changer for you when it came to wanting to buy the pay-per-view or not. No disrespect. But I'm pretty sure you got a lot more excited when Anarchy in the Arena was announced, and then it's like, okay, well, there you go. Bing! That's the one where I make a mental note, or I make a reminder on my calendar, hey, buy the pay-per-view. Does that make sense? And I think it's a strategy that makes sense. Anyway, I kind of went off track here. Okay. It wouldn't be a MrWarrenHayes show if I didn't. Anyway, it kind of all makes sense when you start thinking about it that way. And then I'm really excited to read The Observer this week because Dave is noticing a lot of trends in late buys, which he hasn't seen in the past. Such strong trends in regards to late buys for pay-per-views. It was very strong for Revolution, wasn't as strong for Double or Nothing, but was there. So do we assume that because of the buzz and the hype that the late buys for Forbidden Door might put it over even more? We'll see all. Let's talk about this Friday on Going Broadway, which is the members only stream that you can join on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes by becoming a member of the channel. Anyway. Also on this show, All Out was announced for Labor Day weekend again this year in Chicago, and it's a Chicago takeover. Okay, that was let's say that was a pun I intended to make. Let's roll with that. yeah, there's Dynamite in Chicago, Rampage in Chicago, Collision in Chicago, All Out in Chicago, and as everyone expected, it's happening despite the fact that a week before, just 7 days previous to this show, is the Wembley show. And people are worried that All Out is not going to get a lot of tickets. People are not going to pay to go watch this show. You crazy. Come on now. This company is successful. You can spin it any way you want. And unless it is AEW is a successful wrestling company, then you're off the reservation. It makes no sense. You've lost the plot. This company is successful. It just ran an all-time gate record for itself. Third, the best non-WWE wrestling gate of all time in Canada. 66,000 tickets sold for Wembley Stadium in August, and there is not a single match announced. But yes, let's focus on the Hamilton show, on the Hamilton Collision this week. Yes, let us say that AEW is failing because one date ain't quite working out. But yes, let's hyper focus on that, and based entirely off of that, let's just sit around and say that this company is not successful, that it is not a success. Jesus Christ. And for the record, because it's asked in the chat, because it is asked in the chat, even though I am off Twitter, many people still share tweets in Discords and DMs and whatnot. So I still see very bad takes, but I don't get worked up about them anymore because I don't feel like I have to respond. Because it doesn't concern me because I'm not on Twitter anymore. The 0 Hour pre-show I'm going to run through these fairly quickly, if that's okay. At the Mogul Embassy, defeating the team of Chaos and El Desperado, who is not Chaos at all, not even Chaos adjacent, but had me wondering, if this wasn't a spot that was reserved for Yo, maybe, and if so, why didn't Yo make the trip? I don't know. I was happy to see El Desperado. That was a fun little match. Then we had the Owen Hart Foundation 2023 Women's Tournament quarterfinal match, where Athena defeated Billy Starks. And Athena was just her good old-fashioned aggressive self. Fine little match. Good to see Billy Starks on the big stage. What a trip it is for her. I don't want to spread any rumors, but I think she's on a tiered deal with AEW. I'm just saying. El Fantasmo defeated Stu Grayson. El Fantasmo, before the show, couldn't get into the building. I have photographic proof. Standing in line, waiting to get into the building, and then looking around. Holy shit, that's El Fantasmo. And he had a big bag from the LCBO. If you don't know what an LCBO is, check it. Just Google it. And the LIJ team of Bushi, Hiromu Takahashi, and Shingo Takagi defeated the United Empire crew of Jeff Cobb, Kyle Flesher, and TJP. And that was fun. That was a fun, one of these really fun, energetic, high energy New Japan trios, on Road 2 shows or on, or at this type of spot on the card. This was fun. The LIJ guys really went into it. They were over as hell. Everyone was over here. Great match. Oh, great. Pump the brakes. Really good. It was a really good match. I enjoyed it a great deal. It was good to see. Look, I'm going to tell you. I don't know why they're keeping Hiromu Takahashi off of the singles racket in these Forbidden Door shows. And Shingo, for that matter. Because these guys come out to huge reactions. Bushi is what it is. Bushi understands his role. We understand his role. It's all fine. But Hiromu and Shingo together, that's fantastic. They came out and huge reactions from the crowd. Enough of this nonsense of putting Hiromu and Shingo, burying them into multi-person matches. What are we doing? Hey, Vape Ross. Vape, nice to see you. See you changed your name, but you'll never escape me. Member of the MrWarrenHayes Show channel, by the way. Oh, you did? And then we get to the main card. Opened up with the AEW World Title match. An excellent decision, by the way. MJF successfully retained by defeating Hiroshi Tanahashi. This legitimately was the best possible match that you could have between these two and the best possible match to kick off the show. You couldn't have had a better way to start things off than the guy who embodies, the goon wrestler. He's like, I don't want to wrestle, anyone I don't know, whatever. It was entirely what I expected this match to be, and it rocked. Shit heel MJF. Full on here. The ace of the universe, Tanahashi being, going full hero here. And MJF here went in full old school work. He just went completely leaned entirely on his extraordinary character work to make this happen. And of course, and again, two guys who have brilliant wrestling minds who put a highly entertaining wrestling match together. Because here's the thing that you must never forget. MJF he talks a big game about, the nerds and, New Japan and, Japan indies and whatnot. But he's a tape watcher. This MJF is a student of the game. He would not be as good as he is in all the little subtleties if he didn't know his history, if he didn't know what was going on. So if you don't think that he was thrilled to be in this match against Hiroshi Tanahashi, and I mean on a personal level, one of the greats, you weren't watching the same match I was, because he gave everything he had to make sure that Tanahashi came across as as the hero, the people's champion. And even when he said, these people are not on my level, they're not on the level of the devil, right? The New Japan guys. He said even if he said he didn't want to compete with them, he wasn't going to compete with, anyone from a rinky-dink indie fed in Japan. Even though he felt that he was above everyone in this match, he still had to cheat. You have to love this. It all works. Especially when you have, like I said, Tanahashi doing the best pure hero version of himself, and MJF is just poking him in the eye. He's giving him the old Roddy Piper special. Tanahashi goes for the high fly flow, gets knees up from Max. Bryce Remsburg, the referee, gets distracted enough to allow MJF to use the Dynamite Diamond Ring. Clock Tanahashi across the jaw for the win. Great opener. I have nothing to add here. Just a great opener. Well, that's not true. I do have something to add. Tanahashi, man. I've been talking about it over the past couple of months. My New Japan reviews and whatnot. he is physically shot. And we are going to have to come to terms with the fact that Hiroshi Tanahashi it will not be able to keep up for long. You know, he's doing a G1 this year. It's not as grueling a schedule as G1s of the past, you know, where everyone worked every night. If you weren't working the block, you were in the undercard, right? So, you know, there are nights you will have off, you know. You'll have every other night off. And then when there's a break between blocks, because it does happen for travel. But you know, I've mentioned it, and I think this is a thing, and I think this fits into the larger story that New Japan is telling with Tanahashi, and that is he cannot keep up with the new kids anymore. He just can't. And that's a good story to tell. It's already started in Japan right now with, you know, all the newcomers angling for their spots. And look, the one thing I'll tell you, the earlier we all come to terms with this, and I can understand why New Japan wants to keep him around, keep him on the cards. He's still a draw, you know. He's Hiroshi fucking Tanahashi. He's going to put asses in seats even today. So I can understand why they still want to keep him around. But I think the sooner that everyone comes to this realization, and the reality is setting in, that his knees are finally just unable to do it, that he doesn't have the mobility, he's not as supple as he used to be, he's not as quick, definitely not. Once we've all come to grips with this, that it's slowly time to transition to the dads, we will avoid having a Kaiji Muto situation where no one wants to see Muto anymore, because Muto is still acting like it's 1996, but he's over the hill and doesn't have any cardio and his knees are completely shot. You know, it's like, I don't want that for Hiroshi Tanahashi. Do you know what I mean? I want, for a guy who has carried this company on his back for many years, who is, I think, you know, one of the crucial pieces of the reemergence of New Japan after Inokiism, a man who has always conducted himself with class and with dignity. I think he deserves and should attribute himself a dignified way to remove himself from pro wrestling, which I don't think is something Muto did. I think Muto ended up, you know, you'd be much better served going back and watching old tape of Muto at any other given time in history than watching, you know, the last 2 years of his run, which only served to infuriate and, you know, to a degree, depending on how far you want to go, taint his legacy. Because we're getting at that stage where you're just better off going back and watching the Tana of old than watching the old Tana. But good match. Then we had the Owen Hart Foundation's 2023 men's tournament quarterfinal match, in which CM Punk defeated Satoshi Kojima. Come here close. There's something crucial I have to tell you. Anyone who posts, writes, speaks that the Toronto crowd during this match was split between CM Punk fans and CM Punk haters, or people who don't like CM Punk, anyone who says that the crowd was split is a liar. I was there. That crowd was not split. Sure, there were people with CM Punk t-shirts. Sure, there was a bunch of people hard cam side who had a CM Punk thing. Good for them. But I promise you, that was not a split crowd. At the Collision show, because I was at Collision too. At Collision, I couldn't tell. People were telling me, "Oh, it sounds like a split crowd." What do you think? I had floor seats, and I feel like, noise didn't travel as well. So I honestly couldn't say. Yeah, 93.7 is a split. Yes, it is. But at Collision, I couldn't make it out. But at Forbidden Door, look, I was lower bowl, and boy, oh boy, this was not a pro-punk crowd. This was Satoshi Kojima's time to shine, who is still a very capable pro wrestler. Now, we're talking about Hiroshi Tanahashi here. It's like, well, it's time to take the foot off the gas. But Kojima here, of course, does it. Another guy who's not wrestling like he wrestled in the 2000s or whatnot, of course. But he's still got it all down. Brother's got it. He still knows what to do. And if he can't do it athletically, he knows what to do to the audience to make it seem convincing that he's still on top of things. When you juxtapose what Kojima did in that ring to Tanahashi, it becomes flagrant. It really does become flagrant how different and how on two completely different levels these guys are right now. And look, hey Pluggo, nice to see you. Welcome to the chat, of course, of the Between Two Beards podcast over on youtube.com/lovewrestling. Love Wrestling CA. I don't know, I just subscribe to Love Wrestling. It's undeniable that CM Punk is a heat magnet. Whether it's good heat, whether it's bad heat, this guy is under the skin of wrestling fans. And again, that can be a good thing or a bad thing. I know a lot of people like to compare him to Hogan, but in this boy's book, he's much closer to a Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels than a Hogan in the way he conducts himself, in the way he embraces the heat, in the way that he trolls the fans. And it's weird that a guy who is such a Brett guy would actually be acting so much more like HBK. He had his working boots on for this one. You can't deny that. Lots of winks and nods by CM Punk to Hiroshi Tenzan, right? Kojima's tag partner. We got Mongolian chops and the Anaconda Vice, right? Which Punk lifted as a finisher years ago. And this was good. This was very good. This was very, very good. Delivered big time. Better than anything, honestly, better than anything we would have got with Kenta. I can almost guarantee it. I feel like I wouldn't even have to go into a different timeline, hit the multiverse and go into another timeline to check it out. I'm convinced that a Kenta match would not have been as good. He hits a sloppy GTS for the win, but I feel like sloppy go-to-sleeps are par for the course at this point. And in all fairness, it's not as if Satoshi Kojima is a cruiserweight. He's a big, beefy lad. That's what bread does to you. Eat your bread, kids, and you'll get big like Satoshi Kojima. You'll be able to hit elbow drops right in the penis. Straight in the cock. Apparently, old Punker and the Elite, if we break for a little bit of news here, apparently old Punker and the Elite were in separate sides of the building, keeping them apart. Reported by Fightful Select, right? Got to keep them separated. That kind of stuff. And yeah, that's the thing that happened. I mean, why wouldn't they? I mean, look, it's an interesting report. Don't get me wrong. It sort of confirms a lot, a lot of things, but it's not surprising. It's not like something where you're like, oh, really? They did this. It's like they created a whole other show to keep these guys apart. The Bucks, specifically the Jacksons and CM Punk. And we heard that the Bucks and FTR had smoothed things out. Don't know if you guys heard about this, guys, gals, non-binary pals. Dave Meltzer noted on Wrestling Observer Radio that the Young Bucks and FTR still have a good working relationship. It was noted that he noted, I should say, that someone assumed that since FTR are friends with CM Punk, they would take his side against the Bucks. Maybe they do, but maybe at the same time, it's just like professionalism is taking over here, because it doesn't seem to be a case where they're drawing a hard line in the sand. There is nothing that could stop the company from running a tag title program between the two teams. As Dave says, everyone's cool with that possibility happening. Dave also noted that there was an issue, but that there was an issue, but it was much easier to mend than the Elite situation with Punk. And as far as Punk and the Bucks go, Meltzer noted that there is some fence mending that still needs to take place. So, my pie analogy. You remember? I'm going to hang on to that one moving forward. That tiny, minuscule sliver of pie out of the whole pie, which is the reconciliation between CM Punk and the Elite, right? Remember last week I was telling you, I don't want to say that everything's smoothed over. I don't want to say, but, there's a tiny little sliver that exists, and I'm thinking maybe things are better. Maybe things are going to be less heated and people will start talking with each other again, and to maybe eventually get the Elite versus Punk versus the Elite versus CMFTR. But my slice is still extremely small, very thin, hasn't budged much. But it has budged a little. Because if I'm hearing that FTR and the Bucks are cool with each other, and the idea of them having a tag match together is like, yeah, we could do that. Wow! Might make that slice of pie just a little bit bigger. And I'm not saying like, oh, suddenly we're opening up to a third of the pie or an eighth of the pie. No. I'm talking like you got your knife and you're moving it like a 1 degree extra. Still very much an isosceles triangle, an isosceles, an isosceles triangle, an isosceles, isosceles. What the fuck is it isosceles. But that's not it. It's not isosceles because that's the one with the right angle. That's not one that has a. It's not obtuse. What's the opposite of obtuse? What's the opposite of obtuse? Of an obtuse angle. An acute. There you go. Thank you, Flowman. Maybe a little bit of the stroke. But it's an acute angle, so very, very thin, tiny, but it's budging. Because my spidey sense is still tingling. Then we had the AEW International title, the four-way between Orange Cassidy, Daniel Garcia, Katsuyori Shibata, and Zack Sabre Jr. Of course, Orange Cassidy retained. I don't know how this worked out on television, but it was a blast. Well, come to think of it, I think I do know how it worked out on television because Cage Match rated it quite high. So it looks like it came out about as much fun as it was to watch in the arena. The little taste that we got on Wednesday with the tag team match that led into the four-way here was a great setup. Like, gave us just enough meat on the bone here. It didn't give us meat. It teased us. Gave us the aroma for these ribs that we got. How about that? This is great. Just really a fun combination of pro wrestling with a lot of personality and nonsense from guys who can do exactly that, right? From guys who can do exactly that. The spot where Dan Garcia is dancing in exchange for shots by Shibata and Zack Sabre Jr. was absolutely great. And we're continuing the tale of Orange Cassidy's finishers not being super effective because of, all the work he's putting in, the injuries that are piling up that he's not taking time to treat. He's not taking any time off. He lands an orange punch on Shibata, but Shibata lands an effective one on him. And Sabre and Shibata continue their standing rivalry with some great grappling as well. Or Euro clutch attempts by Sabre can't get the job done. Shibata lands a PK on Daniel Garcia, but Cassidy runs in and just shoves Shibata out of the ring to cover Garcia and get the pin. Garcia, the only champion, did not take the pin here. The only non-champion, I should say, did not take what was the guy who took the pin? Who didn't see that coming? After all three of the champs were in the ring and they were sizing up their belts. That was a fun as hell match. The crowd was super into it too. I'm bummed, nonetheless, that we did not get Orange Cassidy and Zack Sabre Jr. But I can still hold out hope because I still think that match would rule. And there's no hard feelings between Shibata and Orange Cassidy either. I'm not gonna lie, this was a bit of a bucket list moment for me. Seeing Katsuyori Shibata wrestle live. It's not something I thought I'd have the opportunity to. It's something that I was like, yeah, you know what? This is really something I'd love to see before the stroke. and it was great. It was, so for me, there was that little something special there, which I felt vindicated of. That was a bit of a special moment for me. All right, where are we at now? IWGP World Heavyweight Title match. Sonata defeated Jungle Boy Jack Perry. This match was well worked. I found it was a good pro wrestling match. I thought Big Match Jack showed up. I know there's a lot of discourse around Jack Perry, but he always shows up for the pay-per-views. Jack Perry's pay-per-views are second to none every time. And he showed up here. And I thought, like I said, thought the match was well worked. I thought it was good. But I don't think the match was interesting, if that makes sense. And it failed to captivate me. It's like I'm watching people telling me, look, here are two good pro wrestlers, and they're going to put on a good pro wrestling show for you. They're going to put on a good pro wrestling match for you. Sorry. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but it was lacking that emotional connection here. You know, the story here was that Jack was not on Sonata's level, right? Like if Sonata was going to come in as the world champion and he was going to fight effectively a mid-carder in New Japan, although you could argue that Sonata's a mid-carder anyway. You could argue that since he's fighting a mid-carder, well, he's going to sort of show that the mid-carder is not on his level, and that's all right, you know. And I think what we got was Sonata working a Sonata match instead of looking dominant. Again, if that makes sense, right? Because look, if you listen to my, you know, if you hang around whenever I'm doing reviews of New Japan stuff, I can tell you, it's like, look, Sonata, and I've had this apprehension from the get-go. Sonata's not exactly, you know, your high octane, explosive, dynamic pro wrestler to begin with. So if he's working his style of match, well, there's gonna be a disconnect there. He doesn't have that connection, and he doesn't work for it either. Like, he doesn't make it happen. The match was put together for him to look dominant, but Sonata was Sonata throughout the match, where he just was there. I didn't feel anything outside of appreciation for the technical know-how that these two guys have, you know? Because again, I didn't hate the match. Jack Perry does a skull end and a good one. Sonata does the moonsault for the win. Isn't his finisher the deadfall? Isn't that new spin thing that he does? Isn't that his new finisher? Because I was surprised. Here. The moonsault is in his repertoire of, you know, potential finishers, right? Of lower end finishers, right? Like, you know, Shingo can finish you with a made in Japan if you're a lower rung wrestler. But if you're one of the top guys, he's going to need to pull out the Last of the Dragon, which is the one you don't get back up for. That's the protected finisher, right? The moonsault, for me, doesn't feel like the protected finish for him. I feel it's the deadfall. So I found the conclusion sort of came out of nowhere, and then I'm like, well, there's the message right there. Jack Perry is not on Sonata's level because the secondary finisher took care of him. But it was fine. Don't get me wrong. It was just a bit of a surprise, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's done." Anyway, it's not even the main talking point to come out of this match. The main talking point is Jungle Boy clotheslining Hook at the top of the ramp, turning heel, flipping the switch. We're done, pal. Hit the bricks, bozo. I'm a bad guy now. I thought it was a good moment to do it. Why would you have dragged this out any longer, right? You know what I mean? Because I felt, and I really did feel Like when Jack Perry came out, and people were doing the arm things and whatnot, and I felt like there wasn't like this swell of support for him, again, if that makes sense. People were happy to see him, but there wasn't like this upswing, because I think, look, this was a smart crowd, like a, smart in the wrestling, smartened up to the business, as they said. They knew, we all saw it. We've been watching wrestling for a while. You see the signs when a heel turn is incoming. So everyone was just like, okay, it's a question of time. When is it going to happen? Well, might as well just do it there. I didn't see any value in dragging it out too much. And frankly, I'm all for it. I'm all for it because he needs a refresher. He needs a change. Jack Perry needs to try something else. Why not this? I'm absolutely for it. Let's give it a go. We'll see what kind of mannerisms can develop out of here. Maybe this is just what he needs. We'll see what the next thing is when we start moving forward here. And as it's pointed out in the chat here, of course, I wasn't privy to this live, but many people put over Taz's fantastic work on commentary, putting over the fact that Jack Perry was a dead man. Weren't that his exact words? Anyway, it's good stuff. I'm excited to see how this goes. And however this feud with Hook is handled, I think Hook drops the title. And I really, really, really hope that when Jungle Boy wins the title, Christian Cage comes out, hugs him, welcomes him back to the fold, takes him in his arms and says, "Welcome back, son." That's what I want out of this angle. This is the ultimate payoff. Christian Cage reassembles his boys, but they're all assholes now, all three of them. And Christian Cage saying, "Welcome back, son." Come on now. Tell me that wouldn't rule. The elite team of Adam Page, Mac Jackson, and Nick Jackson, aka the Hung Bucks, alongside Eddie Kingston and Tomohiro Ishii, defeated the Blackpool Combat Club trio of Claudio Castagnoli, John Moxley, Wheeler Yuta, accompanied by Konosuke Takeshita and Shota Umino. What a bonkers match this was! Bonkers! And yes, I made my pay-per-view debut here, but we're not doing this. Let's move on. This was great. Mox and Eddie. There was tons of stories being told in this match. This show that apparently contains no stories. I saw nothing but tales and story bumps throughout this match, and unexpected ones at that. Just excellent stuff. John Moxley and Eddie Kingston. There's a lot of Eddie story here. What are we even talking about? Here's the thing. I love that they're pushing the idea that Eddie and Mox are conflicted, right? Eddie probably just more than Mox. I think Mox not quite as much, because Eddie specifically, he's more disappointed in Mox for hanging out with Claudio, who historically Eddie Kingston loathes in story. And so Eddie, at some point he takes a bullet for Mox. He eats, a double super kick from the Bucks, pushes Mox out of the way because he's still his friend. But Mox later on won't return the favor. And then Claudio in the match, he never fought clean. He never fought Eddie clean one-on-one. We're dropping things. We're continuing to add to this fire. And then on top of that, you have the excellent elite BCC story. Again, Warren continues to push his agenda that the Blackpool Combat Club, since its inception last year, has been systematically the best thing on AEW TV. Systematically, regularly, has never failed us. It has been the best thing, and it continues. And then, on top of all these stories, you're getting moves. It's the moves match. You get people doing shit. You get people flying onto the floor with Adam Page with a Norihara moonsault. You have Konosuke Takeshita and Tomohiro Ishii clobbering each other in a highlight moment of this match. One that I never realized I would be salivating at the mouth to see, but when it happened, it's like, I want more. I want more. There's so much shit that happened in this match. I'm sure I missed a ton of stuff. I'm gonna have to rewatch this somehow. But seeing the Bucks, the young Bucks, the Jacksons, and their uncanny timing and chemistry live is a thing. It is a thing that is, it's like on TV, it doesn't feel real because it's TV, right? But when you see these guys do what they do live, it is mind-boggling. The precision, the chemistry, the shared brain that the Jacksons have. Ridiculous. And Hangman Page, he's a guy. He is such a guy. His arena presence is phenomenal. Phenomenal. I see the three of those dudes at the top of the ramp when they're doing the sing-along song, when they come out, Carry On My Kansas Son, and they have all the three, and Paige is in the middle. Paige looks like a motherfucking superstar. I don't know why we're balking, why anyone balks on this guy. He's got the presence, he's got the good looks, he's got the charisma, he's got the mic skills, and he's a fighter. He's a goddamn warrior. Ace of the company. Everyone in this match is phenomenal. Everyone in this match is phenomenal. Pros. Absolute fucking pros. World class. Put all the superlatives you want on this. These multi-man matches in AEW have kindled a love that I have not had for multi-man matches in a long time, in a very, very long time. And this one that we saw at Forbidden Door is peerless in the company so far this year. There hasn't been even the trios matches. I believe that the Elite had with Death Triangle. I don't even think they were that good. No, they were good, not as good as. They were very good. They were excellent, but not as good as this one is what I'm trying to say. This was excellent. If anyone wanted to put this on their match of the year lists as we come towards the end of the year, we're not there yet. I'd be okay with it. I'd be like, sure, absolutely, this ruled. Finish comes with Ishii landing the brainbuster on poor Wheeler Yuta. I like the finish. I like this idea of Ishii not being able to not being able, but of Ishii getting the win here. I feel he doesn't get enough wins overall, especially when he comes to North America. And Yuta, we whatever winning streak he was on, pinning Kenny Omega and all that. Oh, he's eating shit now, isn't he? Next, we had the AEW Women's World Title match. Toni Storm defeated Willow Nightingale. I thought this was good. I thought this was good. But listen, I don't know who could have done better in this spot. I really don't know who could have done better in this spot here. Sandwich between a great 10-man tag match and the next match that everyone was, highly anticipating. I honestly don't know who would have done better than what Toni Storm and Willow did here. But this was a good match. And I thought the ladies worked really, really well. Willow has grown exponentially in confidence and an in-ring performance since she started working with AEW before she got officially signed. She's just been excellent. Toni Storm, she's one of the greats. She's the workhorse of the women's division. Every time in the ring, she's just fantastic. Just a great overall pro wrestler who gets it. Who's talented. Who's exciting. And the match connected. Everything connected. It worked. It may have felt underwhelming just because of its positioning on the card. I don't even want to call it. It's not even a question of it was a cool down match. It was sandwiched between two matches. I just had, one that turns out was an excellent match, and another one that people were just chomping at the bit to watch. That's how I felt. It was good. Still, I still have in the back of my head, I'm still wondering what would have happened if everyone had stayed healthy here. Jamie Hayter, Willow Knight, Jamie Hayter, Mercedes Moné, because that was the plan. At least to have Mercedes Moné on the show. That was her spot. Meanwhile, Julia over in Stardom, after their own pay-per-view that they were holding the same night, same day, I should say, right? The same very day of this show. And yes, everyone was on the card. Julia challenged Willow Nightingale to a match for the Strong title. And Willow has accepted since, so. Don't get me wrong, all of this is fantastic for Willow. And you know what? Let's back up a little bit here. She was thrown into a situation, into a plan that was made for Mercedes Moné. I hope everyone sees that clearly, right? This Mercedes Moné was supposed to win the Strong Openweight title. She was supposed to be on the New Japan side for this show. And clearly with the setup with Julia, she was supposed to be the one to fight Julia. These were all things that were planned, and especially the Julia match had been discussed for a while. Everyone was, looking forward to this. Now that Julia has done the challenge, I think it becomes clear. Willow, this is my point. I'm circling back to my point here. Willow was thrown into this situation. They called an audible, and they were like, okay, we're going to run with you. Like, these are tremendous opportunities that she's getting, and she is living up to these expectations right now. Now, is she an attention grabber? Is she a headline grabber, I should say, like Mercedes Moné? No. Is she a draw like that? No. But being tossed into this situation completely unplanned, unprepared, she's wearing these boots quite well, if you ask me. I think she's doing a fantastic job. And I'm excited to see what this match with Julia is going to happen. When it's going to happen and how it's going to go down is what I'm trying to say. I don't know when they're going to do this. I don't think it's happening at the Independence Day shows. Probably going to happen in North America. But, you know, a lot of us who talk about Stardom and Julia and whatnot, I think Julia is going to be one of these Japanese stars that when North American audiences get a look at her, she's going to become a thing. They're going to be like, oh wow. They're going to see her own natural charisma, her own presence. Like, I look at her and I feel like big time vibes from her. True to form superstar vibes. Not unlike Okada, for instance. She owns the place when she comes in. She's fantastic. Charisma, talent, great wrestler on top of it all, right? She's gonna create a whole legion of fans here. IWGP United States Heavyweight title match was also on the line. Who cares? Will Ospreay defeated Kenny Omega to win the title. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, spoiler alert, this is one of the greatest pro wrestling matches I've ever seen. And I said that a few months ago in January 4th, 5th, don't remember. I said the same thing. It's one of the greatest pro wrestling matches I've ever seen. And all the superlatives are there. And, maybe, if you haven't seen the match, maybe some people think, people are going overboard here. But they're not. You can tack on all the great adjectives you want to this one here. And it's crazy. The only match that could possibly top Omega Ospreay from Wrestle Kingdom this year was Omega Ospreay from Forbidden Door. It's just bananas. Just crazy. What a prize. This match was a prize for wrestling fans. For buying the show. For buying a ticket to go see it. A feud, like I mentioned earlier, a feud being handled sporadically over months in 2 separate promotions. This is what I meant earlier when I said this show here is for wrestling fans. It's for us, it's for people like us. I love this match so much. It was extraordinary. And in this match, as opposed to the Wrestle Kingdom match, Ospreay was the aggressor. He was the purveyor of violence. Just like he wasn't expecting that aggressive, violent Kenny Omega at Wrestle Kingdom, he made sure Kenny Omega did not expect this Will Ospreay. He got the same here. Get the bell ring, we get a bell pop. Of course we did. We were up on our feet. And we cycled through the brutality and the violence as Ospreay paid Kenny back for the headshots through the table at Wrestle Kingdom, right? Using commentary table and the table panel. Omega bleeds. But then later, Omega launches Ospreay into the steel steps and he bleeds. And he bleeds a Muta scale. Crimson Mask. That incredible shot, because we did have the Trons all over the place. That incredible shot of Will Ospreay licking the blood, licking Kenny's blood off of his chest. And then of him with Kenny in the sharpshooter, and then he does a crossface. And I know a lot of people got a little iffy at the crossface, and I myself was like, But when you think about it, You know, Ospreay's whole thing going into this match was, I don't like Canadians. I think they're assholes. You're pulling out the crippler crossface here. You know, you're invoking one of the all-time asshole Canadians. That's even like going soft. You know what I mean. Want to talk about terrible people from Canada? They get into the ring and they start hitting moves, dragon sleepers and Spanish flies and os cutters being interrupted by V triggers out of the air. Ospreay throws everything at Omega. Everything. Sky Twister by Will Ospreay, jumping hidden blade, a Stormbreaker, a Kamigoye, followed by a one-winged angel. But Kenny kicks out at one. And we lose our shit. The place comes unglued. We get even the screwdriver with Don Callis. I don't even want to talk about it, because I don't even think it's that much of a distraction. And there are people hyper-focused on this detail. You were delivered one of the greatest wrestling matches of all time, and you're going to debate whether Paul Turner should have sent him back or not. What are we doing? There are other podcasts that will do this, that will break down for 7 minutes why this didn't make sense and then spend 2 minutes talking about this match. I'm doing the opposite, because this match was too good for a story device that just helped elevate the match even more, which is the point that everyone's missing. Kenny Omega lands the Kreutz Wrath, which we hadn't seen in a while. And then later, we get the Tiger Driver 91. The other big talking point of this match, right? That, again, is just, you know, the Tiger Driver 91, the most unsafe move in all of pro wrestling, as now ordained by contemporary wrestling fans, right? Look, I am very much a proponent of pro wrestlers managing their bodies, making sure that they can live long, fruitful careers, because I lived through an era of pro wrestling where pro wrestlers frequently would pass away way too young for a number of reasons, most of them being attributed to alcohol, stimulant abuse, addiction, caused by what? By the lifestyle, by, you know, hitting the ring, getting hurt, but taking pain pills, for instance, to be able to work the next night. You had to make the town, or else the promoter wouldn't book you anymore. So of course, I don't want wrestlers prematurely ending their careers, especially not these days when it is possible to wrestle right into your 40s, your 50s. When I was a kid, you hit 30, you were over the hill. Now, because of sports medicine, because of, you know, improved diets and so on and so forth, wrestlers are able to have these longer, prolonged careers where they can still perform at high level, high peak performance into their 40s, which is unheard of for an old head like me. So of course, I see Kenny Omega land on his fucking head and I'm like, that was not a good move. But the one thing that I'm not going to sit here and do is try to tell you the opposite and say, look, this should be banned and so on and so forth. Let's pump the brakes. If you think that these are not a couple of indie kids on a scene doing nonsense, these are world-class, seasoned pros, international stars who made the decision to pull this move. Now, if they're going to do it, regardless of whether it was approved in the back or not. What is the back going to do at this point? What if, so the agent who helped put the match together is backstage and he's going, Jesus Christ, they weren't supposed to do that. They went and did it. That's on them. Thankfully, from what we hear, Kenny's fine. Thankfully, because it was an ugly bump. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it wasn't. That was a terrible bump. But it's not as if there's suddenly this resurgence of all of this. And it's okay at the same time to not be a super fan of this and being vociferous and saying, listen, that was cool, but stop doing this shit. Don't kill yourselves for my enjoyment, because I will not enjoy that if you die in front of me. And I think it is possible to feel both things, to say, that was cool. It was a bad bump, but please don't do it again. I'm not gonna start picking this apart, and people in my in my own Discord and in DMs. Oh, look at the angle in which he felt. Like, who cares? Picking this apart. Like it's JFK getting shot in the head. Let's have this conversation let's have this conversation again. Kenny Omega turns out, well, he's going to be out for the rest of the year because he broke his neck. We don't know when he's going to be back. All right. These are pros. These are pro wrestlers on top of it all. Not necessarily regarded for their best decision making, I'll agree. But listen. I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you all that in a sport where people are constantly throwing their bodies at the other guy, that there is no inherent danger in what they do. Sure, they can accelerate the process by doing nonsense like this, pulling off moves like this. When I say nonsense, I mean taking bad bumps like this. Sure. And we've seen it up and down the road. And we see it every week. There's death matches and worse. Now suddenly this becomes like, oh, we're normalizing it. This is not normalizing. Because you can have the discussion. You can say, whoa, okay, this was intense. Cool, but let's not do it again. I think that's a possible discussion to have. And whenever these guys fight again, you can be damn sure they're going to tease the Tiger Driver 91 again. They're going to fucking tease it. If not, do it again. You don't think they realize what's going on? What people are talking about in this match? Come on now. And finally, we get a hidden blade and a Stormbreaker. Will Ospreay wins. They've got a third one in the bag. They have a third one in the bag here for sure. Even with Kenny going on social media and giving Will Ospreay props, giving him his praise, they've got a third one in the bag here. We need the rubber match. We're going to get the rubber match. And it's going to happen at Wrestle Kingdom. That would be my guess. What a goddamn great match. Again, now, Warren, yes. Well, let me just make sure. Hang on. Let me pull up the question and answers here just to make sure. Okay, no. I wanted to make sure that no one had asked this question. So, in this, this imaginary fan that I have in my mind. Warren, yes. Did you prefer this match or the Wrestle Kingdom match? That is a very interesting question. Thank you. We're splitting hairs at this point. Who cares? Thank you very much. Good night. I mean, I'm like, they're two of the greatest matches I've ever seen in pro wrestling. You know, when it's going to be time at the end of the year, I'm going to have to dig into it. I'm going to have to rewatch them. Because I have to pick one over the other. I'm going to be I'm going to be submitting a top 10 list at the end of the year, like I do every year. So I'm going to have to make a choice, but I'm not ready to split hairs right now. Right now, I'm still very much in the glow of this. I'm like, this fucking ruled. A brilliant match that was violent, full of moves, smartly done, beautifully executed, well put together, brilliantly told. I got nothing to tell you at this point. Splitting hairs. Then we had the trios match. Darby Allin, Sting, and Tetsuya Naito defeated Le Suzuki Gods and Sammy Guevara. I feel that this is universally everyone's least favorite match of the show. I know it was mine, and it was a weird watch live. I don't know. I also put a little blame on the placement, but because everyone in the audience was a little exhausted from the previous match. We needed some time to catch our breath. But I mean, it was fine. The match was fine. And a lot of the weirdness with Sting and Sammy that we didn't see, we didn't see it. Because we did find it curious that Sammy was out for the majority of the match after doing the 6:30. And from where I was, I didn't see the table, and I guess I wasn't looking up at the screens. I just saw the aftermath and Sting. Like, everything seemed a little off. But hey, seeing Tetsuya Naito live was a treat, even if his presence was spoiled. I told this story on the Collision review. When they had announced previous in the week that Saturday morning at 10 a.m. if you have a Collision ticket, you can buy a ticket for a meet and greet, and tickets go on sale at 10 a.m. on Saturday. So at 10 a.m. on Saturday, I'm on my phone and and then I'm looking at the Twitter again. Look, this was a complete and utter mess. Okay, to try and get to the fucking Twitter account, not the Twitter, it was a mess to get to the fucking place to buy the tickets, right? Because it said keep an eye out on Twitter. So I got, installed the application on my phone because okay, I'm gonna keep an eye on this. And they put the links at awtix.com. You go to awtix.com and there's nothing. What the hell? And then it turns out people do some digging. It's a fan that finds that the link is different. It's to their merch site, like a complete disaster on the social media side of AEW, which is already not. They don't already have a great social media game. This was a complete disaster. But look, here's the point. I go to so I get the ticket for the meet and greet. I go in. And there's 4 available. There's Sonata, there's Suzuki, there's Ishii, and there's Naito. And I'm like, excuse me? There's Tetsuya Naito? Of course, I'm doing a fucking meet and greet with Tetsuya Naito. I'm wearing my fucking LIJ cap. What are we doing here? So I so I do it. I press the thing and I buy it and I'm like, woohoo! I'm seeing Naito later. Early afternoon, I get an email saying that I was refunded the ticket. Like, what? Why? I go back on the merch link. Naito's gone. In his place is Hiroshi Tanahashi, which I took. Don't get me wrong. And then that started leaking online. And then I had some ears on the production side of A-dubs telling me, there was a miscommunication, and Tetsuya Naito was not supposed to be on the card. Was not supposed to be announced there. Basically, they were like, no, bit of a fuck up that happened. Just kind of like, oh really? You don't say. you don't say. But that's all, So that happened. That's how Naito's presence, which had been very well kept secret up until that point, right? That was a great, no one really knew. We were just assuming, but it hadn't been leaked at all. And then we saw him show up at Collision on Saturday, and we're like, yeah, that rules. Yeah, no, I did see. Here you go. The Tanahashi pick is what you want to see? Give me a sec. You're going to see something shocking here. Right here. I am taller than the ace of the universe. Isn't that awesome? Oh, good. Hey, Fretz, nice to see you. Member of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show channel. Good to see you. But yeah, look, saw Naito live. That was awesome. It's one of my favorite wrestlers. The story was just fine. The audience was super into Sting and Jericho when they were doing their things. But yeah, this was disjointed. Wasn't great. Let's move on. Main event. Bryan Danielson defeated Kazuchika Okada. These are words coming out of my mouth. These are words coming out of my mouth. And I was so excited for this match. An absolute great match. Fantastic match. I loved it. There was no reason not to love this. Two legends of the game who can still go, who are at the top of their powers as far as wrestling goes, legacy, respect, aura, superstars, not in the WWE definition, the Oxford Dictionary definition. And this audience that I was in was 100% into it, hanging on each move, because we were all waiting for the big moves, for the big story bumps of the match, the big sequences to pop out of our chair. Because this was one of the points of discussion when it was done. It was like, oh, the audience seemed disappointed. I heard so many people say the seizure took the crowd out of the match when Danielson pretended that he was having a seizure, but it didn't. The seizures. He's been talking about the fucking seizures for years. After he retired, he went on Jonathan Coachman's thing on ESPN to talk about it. He said he was hiding his seizures from the doctors. This is all canon. It's all canon in pro wrestling, and he's using it against us. So it didn't take us out of the match. Not the minute that he gets back up and he lands a knee. I don't remember what the move was, and we were like, oh, motherfucker. Bryan Danielson, this son of a bitch who keeps preying on the knowledge that we have about his injuries. He was doing it when he returned in WWE, holding his neck. You remember? People would drop him. I was like, He'd do the exact same thing, and people were like, no, don't drop him on his neck. Son of a bitch. From the moment it starts. I didn't even mention it. I'm already talking about the seizures. But I didn't even talk about fucking Final Countdown starting. And I hear the grumbling. You know when that when that song starts, it goes, there's like a very low tremble. There's a tremble. It does 3 times, right? And I am up out of my seat. No one around me is like, what's this guy's problem? No, wait. You see, just wait a second. And then the horns thing, right? The place erupts. Everything rumbles. And Rich Craich, and then the voice of Wrestling Select was saying, I need a barricade to slap. I had one. I had a guardrail. It wasn't the same. I was hitting a rail. Again, a show for wrestling fans, for people like us. We didn't need video packages explaining that this was Brian Danielson's old theme, Ring of Honor. We didn't need that. We got it. And those who didn't get it, it's okay. Because you know what they could do? They can just like, Brian Danielson, Final Countdown. Put that in their phone. And the little Google results that they're going to get are just going to pop back up and, hey, this was his theme song. I said, oh, that's why people went crazy. Yeah. And I fucking love that. I love that. I absolutely adore that Tony Khan does this. You know, he pulls out Elton John for the Collision theme, and he did the version of Riders in the Sky. He did the Outlaws version for Hangman Page at Revolution, which such an underrated moment. I still think about it and I get goosebumps because I love the song, and I think the Outlaws version is legitimately great. And we know wrestling and music go hand in hand. It's always been a thing. It's always been an important part of fandom, whether you realize it or not. Me, in my case, there's a lot of times I don't realize how much the music is important until it hits you, until you get, you know, an Outlaws version of Riders in the Sky for Adam Page, until you get the Final Countdown for Bryan Danielson, or Moxley coming out to his New Japan theme. You're like, oh shit! These things end up hitting you different, you know? It's just so, it's made for wrestling fans. You know, we're not concerned about branding. We're not concerned about, you know, PR and how will this affect the choreography of the entrance. Like, we're not concerned with that. We're concerned about giving the fans a good time, making them feel some shit. That's what's great. That's what I love about this. But back to the match. Back to this idea that the audience weren't into it. We were into this match. We were hanging off of everything these two men were doing because we were waiting for the moment. We were waiting for them to give us what Will and Kenny gave us. And maybe that was unfair. But again, this is this, to a degree, this match is a victim of its positioning. I thought this match was excellent. Don't get me wrong. This match was excellent. But we had been trained beforehand by getting these two megastars in the ring, just like we had a few minutes ago. We're waiting for the big bumps, the big story bumps, is what I'm trying to say, to get us out of our seats. Trust me, this was a crowd who knew who these two people were. And we're not just sitting around and going, well, I'm not very impressed. No, it's fucking Okada and Danielson. A match that 6 years ago was unimaginable because of their places of work. A match that we never foresaw happening. Lost the audience. They couldn't have lost this audience if they had tried. They couldn't have lost this audience if they had traded cravats for 10 minutes. It's grappling early on that goes all New Japan at some point as Okada tosses Dragon to the barricades and Danielson starts working Okada's arm. Okada plays the hits with the drop kicks, including that beautiful one to counter a Busaiku knee. It popped right out of my pants. But Danielson, man, he's playing the ground game. He's sniping strikes while forcing Okada to keep his offense at a minimum. And even when Okada hits the landslide and the Rainmaker, Danielson's kicking out of this shit. Then we get the label lock. Okada tries to reach the ropes, but he gets his arms folded over by Dragon and he taps. Kazuchika Okada tapped for the first time in 8 years. If I'm not mistaken. Do you know who is the last man who had Kazuchika Okada tap out? Shinsuke Nakamura. And all this time, at least in the last 10 minutes of this match, Bryan Danielson has a fucking broken arm. And no one used a Tiger Driver 91. He broke it doing a move he's done hundreds of times before. Pro wrestling. That's the nature of it. And I've heard commentary from so many angry Puro fans that Okada should not have done the job here. He should not. But you're Kazuchika Okada and you come up to this match and you've got Bryan Danielson here and you say, I want to lose to this guy and I'm okay with it because this is the American Dragon. I want to lose to this guy. It's fine. What are you going to say? You're going to say no? And look, you could have seen this one coming, politics-wise. Because if you saw Will Ospreay, New Japan guy, pin Kenny Omega, AEW guy, it wasn't hard to figure out what was going to happen in the other match. This is tit for tat. This is politics. This is Gato and Tony Khan saying, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. Just as simple as that. But you can rest assured that a guy like Kazuchika Okada doesn't go in blindly listening to what Gato has to say or whatever. He's like, Okada's probably like, yeah, Gato, I have no issues with this. Hell, have him tap me out. Really? Yeah. I've heard very, very angry Puro fans at the result here. But they left so much on the table here. Danielson and Okada, I don't even think we scratched the surface. I think we've scratched the surface because this match was excellent. People told me that Excalibur called this a love letter to pro wrestling, and I agree. In the execution and how they presented it. Combination of technical skill, moves, just a perfectly put together match. But they left a lot on the table. We're not done here. We are not done. This is a match this is a Tokyo Dome match. And this is something I'm pretty sure Bryan Danielson wants. I'm pretty sure Bryan Danielson is like, yeah, you know what? I'll lose in the Dome. I just want to wrestle in the fucking Tokyo Dome. In front of 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people. Whatever they can scrounge up for Wrestle Kingdom next year. This is a Dome match. We're not done. Now, Danielson hurt his arm, because of course he did. You got to keep this guy in storage. You got to keep him in bubble wrap until it's time to pull him out. At first, I think they said 4 to 6 weeks that he'd be out, but Brie, I wanted to call her Brie Bella. What do they call themselves now? The Garcia, right? The Garcia twins, yeah. The Garcia twins. Brie Garcia posted a picture of Danielson's X-ray, and it is a good old-fashioned snap. It's a bad fracture. It's not a hairline thing. It's a snap. Hopefully, he'll be okay. But he's gonna need some time off. I don't think he's doing blood and guts at the TD Center in a couple of weeks, the TD Arena, whatever it is, Boston Gardens. I don't think he's doing that. But listen, this match was excellent. I love the finish, because it took everyone by surprise, and there was a gasp in the audience. Oh my God. Because it's not just a question of the match finished spontaneously. It wasn't just a question of that. People were legitimately overcome with surprise that Okada tapped. That's crazy. What a fantastic show. Not even close. My favorite pay-per-view of the year so far. And again, sure, I might be biased because I was there on location and the energy is different and so on. Sure, absolutely. But everything rocked. Everything was great. The big matches delivered on top of that. Everyone was putting their best foot forward. Everything ruled. I cannot say it enough. This was a show for fans like us who just devour pro wrestling, and this is what we want. Not the casuals, not trying to run after imaginary fans that might buy a ticket but will never come back. The people who stick with it, the people who love it, the people who come dressed top to bottom in gear, and who go on forums and on Twitter and on Discords, and who listen to stupid ass podcasts like mine. That's who we are. This was for us. Money in the Bank is the next big WWE PLE. That is happening this weekend. Hell yeah. It's happening this weekend. I didn't even pull. This is how I'm very disappointed in myself because my notes are incomplete. I'm very disappointed in myself. July 1st, this weekend, Canada Day. What a great way to celebrate Canada Day than to settle in with the family and watch the annual Money in the Bank pay-per-view taking place at the O2 Arena in London, England. So that's kind of exciting. That's actually very exciting. I don't know how exciting it is. But listen, it's the big Money in the Bank 2023. I'm low on, well, you guys, gals, and non-binary pals know that in general I'm low on the WWE product. But you know, if we start creating stratas of low, Money in the Bank is one of the lower. It's on one of the lower echelons, which is a word, by the way, that I knew before Will Ospreay did. Echelon. But in all seriousness, it's not a show I'm necessarily looking forward to, but I think there's just enough interesting for me to captivate, for me to be captivated by what's going to happen, because there's potential for some good stuff. There's some ostensibly head-scratching things here, but I don't think this is going to be a disaster of a pay-per-view. The problem that I have with Money in the Bank is the aftermath. I don't think there has been anything truly compelling in regards to Money in the Bank for years. This was something that was designed to help elevate and create new superstars. And if we are to, if you were to look back at recent winners, and I'm not talking throughout its history, I'm talking about like in the recent history of Money in the Bank, no one has really elevated. No one has hit that next big step. And there were years where it's people that didn't have to win it in the first place. And yes, everyone's going to point to Seth Rollins because Jesus Christ, WWE are going to drive that down our throats for. They've already started. They've already been doing it. But this is all they have, right? Like, look, Baron Corbin, right? Failed cash-in on top of that. Let's say we go back to 2017. Because look, the last compelling winners, could say, like, of course, Seth Rollins, right? 2014. Then Sheamus. Then Dean Ambrose. Do you remember that guy? Money in the Bank 2016. He cashed in. He cashed in the night that he won. Then I find like moving forward falls off a cliff, right? Baron Corbin, and his cash-in failed against former WWE champion Jinder Mahal. Braun Strowman then, and his own cash-in was failed as well against Roman Reigns, and in a terrible Money in the Bank briefcase run where you remember he said, I'm going to announce it, and then he walked out during the SummerSlam match that Roman had with Brock, if I'm not mistaken. He walked out, and everyone was like, what's going on? And then he walked back or what? Look, just a terrible run. Then Brock won it in 2019, and everyone was like, what the fuck? What is this? And then Otis. Remember the big Otis push? And he didn't even have the chance to cash it in or even lose the cash in because they did the angle with The Miz. And then Big E. And Big E, someone that everyone was legitimately happy, but he won See, the thing now with the Money in the Bank briefcases, right, is that everyone wins them by sneaky, nefarious methods, right? Come in after the person's had their matches. And that's part of the charm. I get it. But if you're Big E, the babyface, and you want to put him over, and look, I've had discussions on this podcast about that. You can go back and listen. If you want Big E to get over like a big babyface star, don't have him, win the briefcase shittily, right? That's not why we're here. And it didn't work out. He didn't even have the briefcase for a full 2 months. Not the briefcase. No, he did. No, that's it. He had the briefcase for 2 months, and then he had such a short reign, and he's never sniffed the title since. Now it's Theory. Theory who had it, and he failed. I don't know why people get excited about this anymore. I kind of find it all tedious. I don't find it's anything interesting. I don't find anyone gets elevated. It's the same thing with the women. Nikki Cross didn't get an elevation. Look at where she is now on the card. She got turned into a superhero. And then now she's doing this. Whatever this is, Liv Morgan. Her reign wasn't... there will be people who will tell you it was great, but it wasn't. It objectively was not. It's a concept that needs to be reevaluated, sent back to the drawing board, come up with something else. Because here's the other thing is that we have the Royal Rumble, which is highly recognized as being, an exciting part of the year, where you do get your number one contender that's set up there and he gets to choose which champion he fights and so on. So Money in the Bank feels extraneous, on top of it. It's not even exciting. The match to get there might be. I think there's potential. The men's Money in the Bank match has Ricochet, Ricochet, Shinsuke Nakamura, LA Knight, Santos Escobar, Butch, Damian Priest, and Logan Paul. And I was enjoying this field, seeing it build up right up until Logan Paul got thrown in here. And here's what I'm hoping. The deep, dark side of myself hopes Logan Paul wins and cashes in on Roman. This is because that would just be juicy. And, Vince is back in control of everything. I don't know if you've heard, right? These are the reports that are being leaked out. Fightful talks about it. I think it's the second or third week that this gets reported that Vince is tearing up things and starting over. They were saying the Raw last night had Vince's fingerprints all over. And I'm like, ew, Vince's fingerprints, disgusting. Yuck to begin with. Yuck. But then, when you think, what would be a very Vince thing to do? To do something to get heat. That's what he'd want. He wants heat. What more would you want out of a situation to generate pure heat than to have Logan Paul and on the same night cash in the briefcase and become undisputed Universal Champion? I would laugh heartily, and this would be the first thing we talk about on the podcast. You know what? I'd probably do an instant reaction. I'd probably do I'd fire up the old stream. You guys know I don't necessarily like doing them, but in this situation, it would warrant it. Anyway, there's no point in breaking down all the implications until it happens. But no, but seriously, Vince's fingerprints are on everything we're being told. So why not? Why not, Vince? I mean, these are business people, right? It's all about doing good business, getting that mainstream attention. What more mainstream attention could you get than giving Logan Paul the WWE Championship? What a disaster that would be, though, for fans. Holy shit. It would be a complete and utter disaster. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about, about Vince, still having his fingers in creative and whatnot. And I find it funny then there's more reports coming out that people are trying to put a stop to this, and there's well, apparently Nick Khan is really mad about it and Triple H is really mad about it. And I'm like, I don't think Nick Khan gives a shit. I really don't. Did you see the numbers that Raw did, ratings-wise, last night? Huge. Tremendous. Like, they were even outclassing things on broadcast, and they were on cable last night. They were just doing... So do you think, for a second, that Nick Khan is sitting in the back, in his chair, and he's hearing that Vince is on Zoom, calling in corrections, and he's like, no, this cannot stand. Fuck! They're doing things, and they are popping monster ratings. Nick Khan's like, let the old man do whatever he wants. And then, there's people saying Triple H is probably upset. Triple H, right now, has nothing to say. Because he is in the perfectly tenable position of being, well, if the show sucks, it's not my fault. Remember, I'm Papa H. I'm the guy who came in with all those fresh new ideas last year. Remember that? I wanted to try so many things. I let people say wrestler on TV again. Remember, I'm that guy. I'm sorry things aren't going your way, but it's out of my hands. It's Vince McMahon. I'm really sorry. And that's what the fans fall back on. That's what WWE fans fall back on. If the show is good, oh, well, it's Triple H. But if the show stinks, oh, it's Vince. That's how it goes now. Now that most of them have accepted that Vince did indeed come back to the company to get back in power and have his fingers in creative again, despite the fact that he said he wouldn't. What have I been saying? What have I been telling you? I don't guide you down wrong paths usually. I usually guide you down the right way. I've been saying this for months. Even when people were saying, no, that's impossible, it's not going to happen, it can't happen. Well, it's happened and it's happening. So that's, Triple H is in a perfect position where I'm convinced he's like, well, we're good. It's fine. Guys, I'm trying my best here, but old man McMahon, he's coming in and screwing everything up. I'm sorry. You know I have your back. You just wait. Very soon, Sami Zayn will win the title. You'll see. The media game is outstanding with WWE right now because they have their own counter, and isn't this wild when you think about it? They have their own public relations counter for when their shows are shit. They can say, "Oh, it's Vince," and people accept it and go, "Yeah." Instead of just going, "Yeah, you know what? We're going to get rid of the cancerous elements that are making the show shit." They're like, "No, we're sorry. There's someone at our employ working under our banner that is making this shit, and there's nothing we can do about it." And now I'm saying Nick Khan is upset. Triple H is upset. Nick Khan doesn't give a shit. This is generating tremendous ratings for the company right now. They're fine. Triple H, he's like, no, the show stinks, but it's not my fault. Everything's fine here. Everything is fine here. Anyway, back to the match. Let's say outside of Logan Paul here, if I were a betting man, I would have gone with LA Knight. Because LA Knight, right now, is a hot commodity in WWE. People are warming up to him. He's doing what he needs to do. He's cutting his promos. Look, someone asked me on the Q&A last week, when was the first time I came in contact with LA Knight? What did you think the first time you saw him? The first time I saw him was in Impact, when he was still there. And I believe he was cutting a promo. I can't quite remember on who. And, I'm thinking Homicide, or maybe it could have been the Lucha Bros. I don't remember. But I do remember sitting there, listening to him and saying, what is this guy doing here? This guy is WWE ready. What is he doing? Why isn't he working for them? He's got the size. He's not not a work rate guy, not an exceptional worker, not a bad worker, but not one that you tune in, not a guy that you're angling to get the 5-star classics out of. That's not what he's for. But charisma, connection with the audience, extraordinary promo. That's all you need. That's how you get over in WWE. So what is he doing? What is he doing here in Impact? Next thing I know, I see him on the NWA Power. And he's outclassing everyone. And, Eddie Kingston's on that too. I'm like, what is he doing here? What is he doing in these bumfuck leagues when he could absolutely 100% be on the main roster? And then they call him up, they put him on NXT. And I'm like, what are you people doing? And I said the minute he gets up on main roster, he's going to get over, and look at what's happening. LA Knight is so great. You see it up and down. People going nuts. LA Knight, he's the guy. They'll do it. Put your money where your mouth is. If you want the Money in the Bank thing to be something where you give a push, elevate and a push to someone, do it. This is it. This is your guy. Everyone else on this in this field: Ricochet, Shinsuke, Escobar, Butch, Damian Priest, all great workers. Some more than others. This is good. This has the potential to be a fantastic match. It's a ladder match. Don't get me wrong. I'm not chomping at the bit to see it because I'm exhausted with ladder matches. But you look at this field and you're like, these are all great people. There's, a lot of these people have wrestled each other on the indies in the past. I'd like to see the Pete Dunne of old in this one here. Santos Escobar is fantastic. I'd like to see the Ricochet of old. I'd love to see the Shinsuke Nakamura of old, but I think that ship has sailed. And Damian Priest is fantastic. Now, look at this objectively. Ricochet, Shinsuke, LA Knight, Santos Escobar, Butch, Damian Priest, Logan Paul. Who here screams world title contender? Excuse me, universal title contender. Outside of Logan Paul, who is, a top guy right now, and LA Knight, who has the backing right now of the WWE Universe. Who do you see going up to fight against Roman? Butch? Ricochet? Shinsuke would be a candidate, but that ship is passed, brother. That would be, it could happen, but it would be one of those disappointing Money in the Bank cash-ins where you're like, well, this is going nowhere. You know what I mean? The only ones that have any level of intrigue are LA Knight because it's a fresh match, and Logan Paul because he'll probably do it. The more you think about it, the more my plan of Logan Paul winning and cashing in later on in the evening makes sense. You'll see in a second. I think this has the potential to be a very entertaining match. Now, when it comes to the women's one, Zelina Vega, Becky Lynch, Zoe Stark, Bayley, Io Shirai, Sky, and Trish Stratus, I'm not so confident. Now, I believe there is potential for some breakout performances. I think having the likes of Bayley and Io Shirai in this match elevates the level of competition overall. I think Zoe Stark here has every incentive to go all out and have a breakout performance. And I'm not saying a star-making performance. I'm saying a breakout performance. One where she'll pop out and she'll be like, "Oh, wow, okay, this is what Zoe Stark is all about. I did not know this," right? Trish, again, like I said last week, I think it bears repeating. I think it's cool that we're getting women legends on the roster doing what, or Hall of Famers, right? Doing what the dude Hall of Famers do, like Edge, for instance, like Rey Mysterio, so on and so forth. We've seen it multiple times. Hall of Famers coming back doing matches. We had never really seen it with the women, but now we're doing it with Trish Stratus. That equity, I like it, makes sense to me. But, Trish, nostalgia will taint you to think that Trish Stratus was this incredible worker. She never was. She never was a great worker. She's a fine little wrestler. Back in the day, nothing groundbreaking. What makes her legendary is how she broke into the business and how she never compromised and how she wanted to be a wrestler, treated like the guys. And that's something that you can hang your hat on and that she should be proud of. And that is an accomplishment. Her in-ring stuff is... Now fast forward, 20 years? Most of which she spent not wrestling. This is fantastic, We have to stop trying to make Zelina Vega a thing. As far as a pro wrestler goes, she stinks. Now, and did I hear this right? She's doing the sandal thing. Right? Now we're leaning into the stereotype now, right? Because Vince is back. Definitely not Triple H that came up with this, right? Because probably Vince saw her mother do that at the Puerto Rico show a couple of months ago. And Vince is like, "Oh, you're going to do this now. You're going to do like your mother." Did I see that right? Is this her personality now? And you see, Becky's in here too. But Becky is a hit or miss. She's uneven. And if she starts trying to do overwrought spots with the ladders, I think this is where she's going to lose me. And I love Becky Lynch, don't get me wrong. But she's been trying stuff, and I think she is a competent brawler. And I think she should stick to that as opposed to trying to do too many things that feel a little scattered and maybe don't suit her. I don't know who can, I know, Bayley and Io Shirai, they have this feud going, not a feud, but they're teasing breaking up of Damage Control. They're not on the same page at the very least. So, is Bayley going to win and this is going to drive a Spike harder and she's going to go fight Asuka? Or is it the opposite? Is Io going to do it and then it's going to make Bayley jealous and then you turn Io babyface? Look. The worst decision you could do here is put it on Trish or on Zelina. I think it'd stink. But I'm hoping people get to see what I see in Zoe Stark, because Zoe Stark is fantastic. Then we have Cody Rhodes versus Dominic Mysterio. The top babyface of the company versus the top heel of the company, right? Am I right? Right? The heat magnet. The heat magnet Dominic Mysterio, the guy that everyone boos automatically, like no one's been conditioned to boo him. Everyone just instantly, it's not production, it's not canned heat, folks. Promise. I heard, he's going from Brock to Dominic. I think this is a stepping stone, right? Isn't the plan to have Cody and Brock at SummerSlam? Just give him a little something to do. Chew on the Dominic toy, but then spit him out kind of thing. Let's just move on. This is an unnecessary diversion. I think Dominic stinks. I think Dominic stinks at pro wrestling. I don't think he gets it. I don't think he has the presence. I don't think he has the foresight. I think everyone likes him because of the irony that he is, but he's not good at what he does. He doesn't generate heat. He generates irony. Like, I saw in Toronto an audience turn on Christian Cage. They were mad as hell at him. I saw heat. I saw people angry at Phil Brooks. I saw it. Now, when we get to this here, right? When we get to the when we get to this match here, to Dominic, you see people in the audience with big smiles on their faces going, boo, Dominic, you stink. Because that's irony. It's not great. It's not great, excellent heat. It stinks. Look, is this match going to be good? Probably, because Cody's got this. They're going to rehearse the hell out of this match. Because that's what Dominic does. And again, look, I'm not saying this as knock. Some of your favorite pro wrestlers rehearse their matches. All right? It's not a problem. But they're going to rehearse the hell out of this match, and Cody's going to general the whole way through. Dominic has nothing to think about except hitting his spots, being in position. That's all he has to do. Cody's got this. Complete faith in Cody Rhodes. Of course, Cody should win this. Because if he loses and they extend this feud, Jesus fucking Christ. Seth freaking Rollins will be defending the World Heavyweight Championship, fresh off of his defense against Braun Breaker, against Finn Balor. I don't know what to think. This could go either way. I am angling more towards match of the night territory for this one, because I think Seth is reinvigorated. I think Seth is he's in a good vibe, and he's very good. I know he has a lot of detractors, but Seth, when it comes down to it, he's an exceptional pro wrestler. And Finn Balor, I haven't seen the magic in a long time in Finn Balor. And maybe it's because he's unmotivated. Maybe he doesn't feel it anymore. I couldn't tell you. But if there's an element that could make that this match will not work out, it could be Finn. I think Seth retains. Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa will be facing the Usos in the Bloodline Civil War tag team match. This better be it. This better be it. Like, look, I got nothing else to add on the Bloodline story. I think it's overwrought. It is overwrought, and it has been the exact same story they have been telling, beat after beat, month after month, since Jimmy Uso got back into the issue. Now you got to move on, right? We're done with this, right? There's no real payoff to this, right? People are saying that Jay's the payoff. Jay's going to beat Roman. That's stupid. It's not. Okay. Look. Okay. I've got two theories. in regards to this match here. All this happens and, and they're still pissed off at each other. And maybe they beat up Jimmy to the point where Jay really wants his revenge and he gets Roman to put the title on the line, and they do a full circle in regards to how the whole bloodline thing began, right? And we took a hell of a path to get there, but it would make sense. And Roman, I would not be surprised if Roman has some sort of control over when he drops the title and to whom. And I would not be surprised that he invoked that at WrestleMania. And I'm not surprised if he is more inclined to drop the title to Jey Uso, family member who has been throughout this angle unflappable, and be like, we're going to elevate a guy and it's going to be my family. That's a scenario I could see happening here. I could see Roman Reigns telling creative, I think I should drop the title to Jey Uso. Of course, it's not happening at Money in the Bank, but that's my first thought. But my second thought is with the men's Money in the Bank thing. Because listen, if this match goes on after the men's Money in the Bank match, I am so confident that Logan Paul is going to try and cash in. And he might just do that, after going to war with the Usos and so on and so forth. And then Logan Paul comes down and he tries to do it. But then the Usos interfere. They keep Solo Sikoa away. They keep Paul Heyman away so that Logan Paul can get the belt. I've also seen people say, well, couldn't he cash it in on Seth? He has history with Seth. He has history with both guys. Logan Paul has a bone to pick with Roman and Seth. I'm telling you. The more you think about it, the more the Logan Paul scenario makes sense. Then we have Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler putting up the tag team titles. The women's tag team titles against Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. There's Shayna Baszler in this match who rules, and then there's everyone else. I got no thoughts. And then Gunter will be putting up the Intercontinental title against Matt Riddle. How did this match come together? I don't know. This has some potential, don't get me wrong. Matt Riddle has the potential to get the shit beat out of him by Gunter here. Like, it's a Gunter match. It's Walter. Let's get excited. This is at the very least, it's gonna be brutal. It's gonna be a 5-star classic. No problem. Anyway, Money in the Bank happens this weekend. I'll be reviewing it next week. The review will probably be a little more compelling than my preview. I don't know. I just see so many WWE potential tropes here and things that just annoy me that I'm like, it's hard to get into. And it's ladder matches. It's all hard to get into. And the bloodline thing does not speak to me. It's not for me. But I keep telling you, I will continue reviewing the big shows. This is a big show. Okay, let's finish this off. And New Japan Strong Independence Day show happening next week. I will right on the cusp of the MrWarrenHayes show, like right on it, right? And so I won't. It'll be too late to preview it. Too early to review it. So I'm going to preview it right here. We're going to go over it fairly quickly because we've been here a while. But still, we're going to take the time to do it. July 4th and 5th over in Kurikan Hall. It's the first ever New Japan Strong show in Japan. So that's cool, I guess. 2 nights, and in typical New Japan Strong fashion, a 2-night show. One of the nights seems fantastically superior to the other. Let's break it down. We first of all opening up a 6-man tag match: Dragon Libre, Kengo, and Takahiro Katori versus Oscar Lobe, Rizuki Taguchi, and Yo. Fine little opener right there. And we'll have Bad Dude Tito versus the DKC. TMDK's own Bad Dude Tito. I like Bad Dude Tito. I think we need more Bad Dude Tito in our lives. I am excited for Bad Dude Tito at the show against the DKC. And I hope his TMDK boys come out with him. That'll be fun because, you know, Bad Dude Tito is based in the US. So I hope that, for one of the rare occasions that he does come over to Japan, that the TMDK boys come out to support him. Him who? Bad Dude Tito. Then we're going to get Alex Zane returning to Japan, Lance Archer, and Oiwa taking on the Team Filthy crew of Jarrell Nelson, Royce Isaacs, a.k.a. the West Coast Wrecking Crew, and JR Kratos. I don't have many thoughts. Should be fine. I'm okay. Tom Lawler will be taking on Kosei Fujita. Okay. Tom's getting a youngster being fed to him. Okay. And we get Eddie Kingston and Rocky Romero taking on Gedo and Kenta. Gedo probably there to take the pin. Setting up the Kingston Kenta match on night 2. Then we get into the meat of this sauce. The strong open weight tag team titles will be on the line. Bishamon versus the Bullet Club duo of Alex Coughlin and Gabe Kidd, the War Dogs. Should be pretty good, actually. Coughlin and Kidd absolutely fits 100% in this new Bullet Club attitude that Dave Finlay is trying to create here. Not that Coughlin is a slouch, but Gabe Kidd has that ferocious, like spontaneous, mad as hell energy. So I'm excited to see how it's going to turn out here. And look, drop the titles, put them on the Bullet Club boys. Bishamon doesn't need both sets of straps, really. It really doesn't. Should be good. And we got the Doomsday no disqualification match. John Moxley and Homicide will be taking on El Desperado and Jun Kasai. I'm excited for this. That's going to be ridiculous. Jun Kasai in a New Japan ring in Japan. Let's fucking go. And then we have the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team titles on the line. We're Catch 22, excuse me, one of my favorite tag teams right now in the world, taking on Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney. I hope Catch 22 retain because I need more Catch 22. I want them to have the excuses to have more matches with Catch 22. This should rule. Then on night 2, July 5th, starts off with a 6-man tag between Master Wato, Oleg Boltin, and Taguchi taking on Dragon Libre, Rekka, and Takahiro Katori. Then we have a singles match between JR Kratos and Oscar Lube. Oscar's a big guy, but Kratos is bigger. This should be fun. I mean, you know, he's still a young lion. He's gonna eat shit, but it'd still be fun. Chaos. Rocky Romero and Yo. Almost. Roppongi 3K. That's what they should call themselves. We'll be taking on Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney. Which may be a sign that Catch 2-2 are losing the titles. Maybe. Hiroshi Tanahashi, the DKC, and Tomohiro Ishii will be taking on Team Filthy. Jarrell Nelson, Royce Isaacs, and Tom Lawler. That should be a hell of a blast. That should be fun as hell. Alex Zane and Lance Archer will be taking on the TMDK duo of Bad Dude Tito and Fujita. Homicide and Oiwa will be taking on Catch 2-2. Again, maybe they won't be losing the titles. I don't know. IWGP Tag Team title match. Bishamon will be facing the War Dogs once again, Alex Coughlin and Gabe Kidd, this time for the IWGP Tag titles. I think they drop the strong ones to the Bullet Club, but they retain the IWGP ones. That should be a good time. Final death match, Jon Moxley versus El Desperado, has the potential to be a show stealer. Should be the best match of this weekend. It's in the middle of the week. It's a weekend in the United States, though. It's a holiday. But still, this should rule. This should be absolutely fantastic. And finally, the strong openweight title, Kenta versus Eddie Kingston. Just get it off of Kenta, put it on Kingston. I don't know what to expect out of this. I'm not into Kenta. 2023 Kenta, he doesn't do it for me. Lots of smoke and mirrors, lots of shenanigans. But this isn't the match that people have envisioned in their minds, I don't think. Kenta is full of injuries, not in a good spot. Give it to Eddie. Eddie will just breathe life into it. It'll be so much more interesting. Yeah, so 2 interesting nights of pro wrestling. Nothing that I sit here and absolutely blows me away outside of Mox versus Desperado, which I think is can't miss. And you know, Bishamon. The Bishamon matches should be fun. The Catch 2-2 matches should be fun. But nothing says this is a must-see event. You know, I'll watch them. I'll watch them because I love wrestling and I love New Japan. It's my favorite promotion. So, you know, I'll be locked in on this. I'll give you my full review. Not on next week's show, but on the week after. So, quick little preview here. We'll see how things shake down with that. But in the meantime, we are going to wrap things up with the weekly wrestling inspection. If I am being completely honest with you, I am shocked that my voice stayed okay throughout the whole thing, because it was really rough. It was really rough yesterday and kind of rough today. I'm good on me. Good on you, voice. You'll get to rest until Thursday when I come back with my AEW Dynamite review, recapping the night before. And then back on Sunday for my AEW Collision review, reviewing the Collision of the night before. But hey, listen, if you're still here, you've watched all the way through, thank you very much. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel as well, or if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast application, 5-star rating on Spotify, 5-star review on Apple Podcasts would help out a great deal and would be tremendously appreciated. But I mostly appreciate you listening, watching live, watching whatever you're doing. So join me on Thursday for another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Not the Mr. Warren Hayes Show, the AEW Dynamite review, which is part of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show universe, however. So there you go. In the meantime, hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next time.